Okay, well, sorry for the technical difficulties there, but thank you all for participating. I'm going to introduce Jillian now. She's going to be our first presenter. So Gillian Locascio-Drutis transitioned 4 years ago from the world of policy advocacy and nonprofit management to pursue a career in vegetable farming and is currently in her 3rd year managing her own farm business. She brought her nonprofit work of a love of spreadsheets, a DIY attitude towards operations planning, and a passion for connecting with her customers. Jillian currently owns and operates Dancing Sprouts Farm, a half-acre vegetable farm on leased land in Ording, where she grows more than 200 varieties of vegetables, salad greens, and herbs for her semi-customizable long-season CSA. Dancing Sprouts Farm has grown from 20 to 50 shares each week, with weekly and bi-weekly pickup options. Between add-ons, swaps, market-style prepackaged pickup sites, and vacation holds, streamlining her CSA management systems has become particularly important. She's excited to participate in this workshop and share some of the joys and challenges of bootstrapping a small CSA operation, as well as particular considerations for very small CSAs. Without further ado, Jillian, please feel free to share your screen.
Okay, let me get that going. And let's see if I can remember how to make this present. Is the presentation showing for people or just the window?
Looks
Okay,
good
so
to
when
me.
I go like this, it changes. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. It's great to virtually see folks. It sounds like most people already have a CSA, so some of these may already be tools you're familiar with, or maybe even a little on the small side of where you're at, depending. But I thought I'd just kind of go through some of the tips and tricks that I found useful when starting a very, very tiny CSA. So for a bit of context, and I'll get more into my farm and specifically, but for a bit of context, my farm, I started with a 20-person CSA. A couple of my friends, or a 20 share a week CSA. A couple of my friends have actually started as small as 10. That usually necessitates having a second job, either of those amounts. But it can be a nice way to get started small and test it out and figure out how you want to run it before scaling up. So definitely bootstrapped the CSA. A couple of I think sometimes when people get started in the CSA, they like the idea of it, but there can be a lot of options and choices, and narrowing down on what's going to make sense both for you and then realistically for your customers can be a bit of a balancing act. I had my ideal version of what my CSA would look like, which was like all market style pickup, because I hate packing CSA boxes for people and picking their vegetables, and like these 3 locations or whatever. And then that didn't end up being realistic with my market base. But other things have been boundaries that I was not willing to move. I am not willing to do home delivery because I hate driving. And so there's a balance that you can make your CSA work for you and then figure out what that's going to mean. So first figure out what your CSA is going to, what's your goal of your CSA, the details, and then some of the goals. And my screen share thing gets in the way of me seeing my own slides. Okay, perfect. So kind of as I was talking about, it's important to start picking with what works for you first. Is the CSA going to be your main product, or is it a supplemental sales channel? You might structure it really differently. If it's your main product, you need to make sure that you structure your CSA in a way that you don't have a lot of waste, that all of your vegetables end up with homes. If it's a side channel and you mostly have a farmer's market, or you're mostly doing restaurants, you're going to have different variety available. You're probably not going to have to time it as carefully. So that's going to be a really big piece when you're deciding how you set it up. What are some of your main constraints? This is different from farm to farm and person to person. Is it administrative time that's your main limit? Is it the harvest and delivery time? Do you need to minimize driving? Do you not have enough labor hours? Is it the amount of product, which is the case? And for me, currently, I am limited to a ½ acre. And so I need to maximize whatever it is that I'm doing in that space. Do you like working directly with customers? Does it give you joy to answer their esoteric questions about what the heck is Rob? Or is this a turnip or a white beet? Or would you really prefer to focus on the growing side of the product and not have to be spending as much time interfacing, answering questions, dealing with people rescheduling vacations, or asking you to do very wonky things like, can I pick up 3 dozens of eggs this week and then skip next week for the next month? And then do you enjoy learning and implementing new computer tools, or would you prefer to pay for something that's more out of the box? So I did a lot of like shoestring nonprofit management back in the day. I'm really comfortable with Excel. It worked for me. I've done web design. So it was like fine for me to spend a little bit more time up front learning those tools as opposed to using a service that you pay monthly. But if that hadn't been the case, I absolutely would have gone with some services that you pay monthly that provide a little bit more of a wraparound support. And then, as I kind of alluded to, you do not get to just make your ideal CSA. You do have to actually adjust to what your customer base wants. So a lot of my customers are in Seattle. A lot of them are really small households. So that was a big driver of how I structured my CSA, is that people just don't want too many vegetables. But they're really interested in trying all sorts of different things. That's kind of the reason they got into the CSA. Whereas there are CSAs that cater more to folks who don't want quite as many oddball vegetables, and they want a little bit more of a quantity of really familiar products like carrots every week, whatever. And then do people want like the cheapest kind of vegetables they can get in a CSA, and they're fine washing their potatoes and carrots off of all the dirt, or do they want like a pretty clean presentation where it's really the level of cleanliness that you would expect if you went to a farmer's market or even a supermarket? How much are they willing to pay for convenience, things like delivery, things being prepackaged, for having different options? And then some of the other important values that get people into the CSA on the customer side. So health, environmental footprint, an impact, help with meal planning is a huge one, connection to a farmer. If those are big focuses for your customers, you're going to want to provide a little help on that front of like recipe ideas or stories from your farm, pictures, ways of helping them connect if that's something that is a focus for them. So with Dancing Sprouts Farm, I think I mentioned we started pretty small at about 20 shares a week. That was not my only job at that point. But it did help me cover the startup costs of the farm, of the very, very, very tiny enterprise that it was at that point. I tested out co-working a small market, actually, with some people who are here today, kind of just seeing what I liked. The next year, my plan had been to scale up to 30 shares a week. With COVID, we sold out so quickly, I decided to cut out the market, the farmer's market, and just focus on the CSA last year. So I ended up bumping that to 40 shares a week, which did allow me to make a full-time income farming. And I tried a little bit of wholesaling to a local farmer's market food program. And then this year we're scaling up to 50 shares a week. I wish I could go a little bit more, but out of land. So that's kind of where we're at. And I will say, and I don't know if other people have kind of encountered this, but I feel like as you hit that 40 and 50 shares a week mark, especially if you're a customizable CSA, you start to hit some of those edges where it's a lot to manage manually, but you're a little too small for a lot of the software solutions to make sense. So I'm kind of in an awkward place where it's like, I could either choose to hold it down around the 40 mark or simplify it where people have not as many options, or to scale up a little bit and get some fancier tools to help me. And I'm happy if something people are interested in to talk about some of the choices we made around packaging or flow or some of those like nuts and bolts. I focused a little bit more on the admin side, but happy to talk about that at a smaller scale too, and some of the choices we made. I know people do that a lot of different ways. So one of the main things that if you're getting started on your CSA, that you'll want to be choosing is what type of CSA to offer. Are you offering a set farmer's choice box? On the upside, those are super easy to administrate. I know someone who runs like a 70 to 100 share a week CSA, all manually with like one sign up from Google Forms, and then they just like email everybody and people show up. Because it's the same thing every week. They also are doing market style, which makes it extra easy, but I don't think they even have to worry about vacations. But the upside of the kind of set box is it is way easier on an administrative side. The downside, customers get things they don't like. Sometimes, depending on your customer, that may be a bigger or smaller problem. Some people have allergies. Sometimes a lot of people have allergies, depending on who you're selling to. And it's also, unless it's not your main sales channel, if you're also working a market or something else, you do have to get your numbers really precise, because if you have 18 heads of cabbage and 20 customers, like, you just have extra 18 heads of cabbage to find a home for. That's the thing. So that does work really well if you're already doing farmers markets, because then you're growing extra for the market anyways. And can give a little bit of wiggle room. There we go. And another option that I'm seeing more and more are these kind of fully customizable free choice boxes. It's almost like someone buys a gift card with you up front, and they either show up at your market stall or go on every week and order vegetables, but it's not like they have a certain amount each week. They can order whatever the heck they want. If they want to order broccoli every week, you can possibly produce broccoli, they get to. So on the upside, it's really flexible for customers, especially for customers who like logging in and ordering things, or who already would be showing up at your market stand. It's a great way to dial in what people like. I know some folks up north, and I put some examples at the bottom of farms that are doing this, that you can kind of check out their websites, or even if this is a system that you are curious about, you could potentially contact them and be like, hey, how are you doing this? But it does really let you know what the people that you are selling to like, because they just maybe won't order as much chicory or Napa cabbage or things that I think they should be eating more of. But, so there's that. It does make season-long planning easier, because you just tell people what you have, and they, on a first come, first serve basis, get it. You don't really need to track people's vacations. They handle that all themselves. If you are doing an online ordering system, as opposed to someone swinging by your market stand each week, it can be a bit of a bear to manage the inventory. The folks down in this example, Frisky Girls Farm, I know they originally, I wonder if they've changed from this. I hope they have, but they were originally, when they started, making an Excel sheet, like a fresh list for their customers basically, and people would like go and order, and they would have to update it 3 or 4 times throughout the ordering period manually as things ran out, which sounds awful to me, but they really liked it, and it really worked for them their first few years. And my guess is that they are probably using a different tool at this point. I think they're on like year 4 or 5 of the model, but you also, if you are packing people's, every box is different. So you definitely need to make sure you have a good system for packing, whether that's an easy way to print out people's orders, like good flow. a lot of people I know who are doing this, and this is definitely not the only way, but seem to be pairing it with restaurant sales. And so I wonder if it's because they're kind of organizing their farm more on that fresh sheet model. And then this is what I am doing. It's kind of some of the best and some of the worst of both worlds. So it's kind of a customizable farmer's choice box. I basically set what goes in the box each week, but then I allow people to do some degree of swapping within a list of things that I have extra of or add things on. On the upside, I do get a lot of additional sales from add-ons throughout the year just because I have that list of extra things I have available. And people are really happy. They really like being able to say, I never want green peppers, or I will trade all of my lettuce for green beans this week. And I do have a little more wiggle room on production. So it's, if I only have those 18 heads of cabbage, I can make it a cabbage or something else item. And that works just fine. So some of the downside is that you still end up with some of that inventory management for the swap options. So I'm still doing that manually at this point. I send people in the newsletter a list of what's available, and they just email me or text me by a certain time if they want any of it, and then it's first come, first serve. And then you still have to kind of have that complicated packing, somewhat individualized boxes. It's not as much as if, I mean, I'd say probably at any given point, a quarter of my shares actually bother to customize. And so it's still more streamlined than it would be if every box was totally different, but it's a little complicated to track. And you still need to kind of be planning your CSA for good numbers and timing throughout the year. And a couple of other things to consider as you're figuring out the structure, or if you're adjusting your structure. You want to do home delivery, pickup sites, on farm only. I know some folks who really picked one of these and stuck with it. That was like their non-negotiable, and they've just found the customers who work for that. Pre-packed or market style. Market styles where it's the picture at the bottom where you like lay everything out and people pack their own boxes based on the list you give them, as opposed to me. I didn't put the picture in, but me packing a bunch of things into little half bushel boxes, and then you have to figure out like the drop site situation, how to keep it fresh and cool. Are you going to offer different size options or different pickup schedules? I ended up, for my brain's sake, just sticking with the same size. I only have one share size, but I have about 70% of my customers only come every other week for their share. And that works for me because I don't have to think about different sizes. I know a lot of people like offering multiple sizes because it helps with that wiggle room on vegetables, where they can just put a thing they have a smaller amount of into the larger box. And there's, if you look at like the lean farming stuff, they talk about trying to combine delivery routes or stacking sales. So do you have a sales channel either before or after your CSA where extra things can go? Like, do you have it lined up so that you're utilizing as many of your vegetables as possible? For us, for example, last year we ended up switching from having that tiny farmers market to selling to a local food program. It's at wholesale prices, so it's a little bit less, but it's a really easy way for me to just, at the end of each week, extra things after the CSA I can offer there. And then just kind of the balance of your administrative needs and how far people are willing to travel. I had this really lovely idea that I think I said all of my CSA was going to be market style, and maybe if I were really like firm about saying no to everyone, it would be. But at the end, I have one market style stop that's completely inefficient, but I love it because I still see people, and that's important to me over the summer. But mostly I am pre-packing. I have like 6 or 7 drop sites at this point. And it's just people in the end just want to be able to get their vegetables easily. So, you kind of end up balancing those pieces. A couple of tools. This is just a list that maybe if it's useful to you, you can come back to. Some of the tools I found useful for tracking signups, customer orders, and packing instructions. There's some different like spreadsheet and form options that are free that are quite lovely if you're having to kind of do all of the elements of your sign up and admin yourself. I use Mailchimp for my email. I know a lot of people have luck with Constant Contact as well. I did a lot of research last year to find a texting app where I could send people individual texts if I was running late to a pickup site or if I needed to let folks know, just whatever. And there are a couple good ones that, will charge you a few cents per text. I ended up actually just hacking it where you can like set on an iPhone it to send individual texts when you send them as a group, and I just made like group messages. Anyways, there are ways to work around it. If someone is actually playing with that, I'm happy to talk about how we did that. And then on the accounting side, I know people do a lot of different ways. It seems from talking to folks, it seems like a lot of people end up with QuickBooks Online because it's faster and easier to kind of do invoicing and receipts on the go. That is a monthly fee. There's a fair number of us, me included, who use Wave, which is a little bit less bells and whistles, but is free and still very functional. At my first year, I used Excel. I would probably not do that again because you can't have it auto feed from your bank account. And then, yeah, websites, it seems like probably most people already have those, but different ways you can do that. Yeah, a couple, I don't know how, I'm sorry, it's like hard via Zoom to see how familiar people are with different tools. And so I don't know if this is useful or not, but I just included a quick go through of some of my favorite DIY tools. So I make a lot of use of Excel because I'm just comfortable with it. I use a lot of fancy sum if formulas to track customers at different locations, who still owes me, who doesn't. And I set office hours and I go through once a week and update on payment stuff. One sort of pro tip, if you are using Excel, teach yourself how to use Microsoft Mail Merge. If you haven't yet, it will take you not very long. There are great tutorials online. I think I included a link to one here, but it's a great way of being able to do things like printing labels from an Excel sheet and saves you a lot of time doing it by hand. So I forgot to include a picture of the next two tools, but Airtable is another one that I see people using. It's a little higher functionality than Excel. It is actually a free database tool. This is on my list to teach myself how to use. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but you can do more automation. So you can set up your planting charts so that they automatically calculate the seeding dates. You can do the printing label things automatically. There's some cool tutorials I included for folks who are using Airtable for CSA management and farm management. And then Google Forms is a great way to get signups. If you're not at the point where you want to pay for a tool that allows you to take payment or does more of the admin side for you, it's free. Options are limited. One of my big pet peeves with Google Forms is I can't have it generate a confirmation email. And so this year I finally sat down and taught myself, to use Zapier. Highly recommended if you are on the DIY, I'm doing every single piece of this individually side of things. You can automate different functions for a lot of different things. And so I use Zapier, for example, to automate it where when someone signs up for the CSA on my Google form, it sends them a confirmation email, and I like specified what information I wanted included and wrote in my text. And then it also adds them to my newsletter list. So if you are on the DIY side, definitely teach yourself to use Zapier. It has already saved me more than the number of hours it took me to figure out how to do. And I did it halfway through my signups this year. So yeah, definitely worth it. And then I have been doing a lot of research on other tools that are a bit more all-inclusive, just because I'm probably gonna be hitting a point soon in the next few years where I'm no longer able to or really willing to do it manually if I keep growing. And so this is just some of the research that I've done up to this point on different kind of low cost, mid cost, and high cost CSA management or web store management options that I'm seeing people using. The high cost ones, just a note, it's from talking to them, it sounds like it's generally not worth going with those unless you are making like 5,000 plus in sales a month. So that can be, from when I was talking to them, and it sounds like that's kind of the point where those high cost options, which are really awesome. And I think Liz is going to talk more about the last one because that's what they use, but that's when they really start to make sense financially. And if you are not offering a customizable CSA, or you are, your like needs are a bit more simple, then you know, some of these lower mid-cost ones may be really worth investing in just to simplify some of your admin work. So yeah, on that note, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know exactly where I am on timing because I can't see my clock with this in presentation mode. And would also just love to hear from
time.
Okay. And I just love to also open space. It sounds like a lot of people here are operating CSAs. You know, if you have either started really small or you've dealt with the kind of growing small, any like sharing of tools or tricks is also very welcome. There's a lot of knowledge in this virtual room. And I'm gonna stop my screen share so I can see everybody.
If anyone has any questions for Jillian, you can unmute yourself. Maybe turn your video on if you have that capacity. And if not, we can get started with Liz in a second. So much information. Everyone is just absorbing it, I think. You can also drop questions in the chat if you don't want to be on camera, and very happy to read them for you.
And if anyone does want to talk like specifics of things like wash pack or for a very small CSA, I'm also like happy to chat that now or later. We've gone through a couple iterations of how we manage that efficiently at different scales.
Jillian, I think you mentioned vacation as an issue on one of your slides. Do you let people take, what's your system for vacations and like special requests?
I'm probably too much of a softie. I'm almost always say it's fine. I added a flex option this year to my CSAs so that if people who are going to be gone for an entire month, they can still usually get a CSA with me. But yeah, I do let people take vacations. In my particular case, because so many of my customers are on an every other week schedule, the options for them are that they can flip to their off week, double up a different week, donate their share to a local women's shelter that we coordinate with, or they can convert it to like credits to buy bulk things like sauced tomatoes or basil or pickling cucumbers, things that I do occasional bulk sales of. So that's worked well. People certainly like it on the customer side. It's a little bit complicated to track manually. I have a very big calendar that I use, but I only messed it up once this year, and it was because someone emailed me exactly 2 weeks before their vacation and I just got the week wrong. They were very nice about it. So
that's really nice. I mean, that's really nice of you.
I think it also really is going to depend on the size of your CSA, right? When you have 20 customers, you can maybe manage that, and maybe you have to because you're so small and you're brand new, and customer service is really where you have to shine. But at a certain point, automation becomes really crucial. There's a couple of questions in the chat for you, Jillian. So Hope wants to hear more about the wash pack operation.
I was
And
like looking for pictures and then ran out of time. Yeah, so the first year I didn't have cooler space and I was borrowing in the back of a commercial kitchen, which was challenging since it has to be very, very clean in a commercial kitchen cooler. There's a lot of mopping involved. But yeah, my first year I did mostly market style, and that was what made that doable. This year, because a lot of people wanted to have their boxes pre-packed with COVID, I ended up setting up a few tables, and I found these half bushel boxes. So the previous year I had packed a few people's in paper bags, and I had a lot of issues with either needing to bag things in like everything individually, or they would just melt through the paper bag. So this year I switched to half bushel wax boxes, and I found these giant coolers that I could fit them in. I know a lot of people also will find businesses like restaurants to put their pickup sites in, which can be really nice. And I did a lot more harvesting by number this year. And so the first year, again, I didn't really have a whole lot of customizing that was happening, which was great. And so I just kind of knew what I needed to harvest each week. But this year, I would basically at the end of the ordering window, when people could make changes, I would go through and I would write out the swap list and manually make my pack list, which are things that can be automated if you have the software. But I would basically manually make a pack list and manually make a pick list. And so then I would go out and again, harvest to number. It usually meant I did like the main CSA harvest 1.5 days, and then I did a supplemental harvest the morning before packing with like additional orders, like hot peppers or whatever people had ordered. But yeah, I mostly just laid everything out, and I had an Excel sheet with, because it was a set box with just small things being changed, I just listed if people were swapping or adding anything on, and then I would do those last. And for people who have a standing swap request, which I allowed them to do at the beginning of the year, if they have like some people have allium allergies or you really hate cilantro. And so actually it was really useful for me to get that information up front. And then I just include that on the label for the box with their name. That's like a standing, doesn't matter if they remember to contact me or not. I will like never give someone with an allium allergy who has asked me to never have alliums an onion. I will just throw something else in. So I always have like a box of extra things that I keep in the cooler that I do on harvest day, and I eat whatever's left over from that. But that allows me to like quickly swap in some things to cover if someone has like an allergy. So
Awesome.
I don't know if that answered like the wash pack thing. I mean, it's very small. We have a canopy that manages to die every single winter. I like have yet, my CSA goes through the end of November, and the beginning of November is when I should no longer have canopies up unsecured. And I have like lost the cloth off of it every year. But I just have like a tank, a dunk tank, and a spray table, and then a bunch of pallets, which is like, I want to up my food safety on the whole pallet thing and maybe get dunnage racks from, ooh, that's another tool I forgot to put on, Eli Auctions. I'm going to write it in the chat. Here in Tacoma, if you're like willing to engage in the whole auction process, there are a lot of restaurants and catering places going under right now, and they have things like dunnage racks and wheeling stainless steel carts, and like folding harvest bins and stuff. So I've been trying to follow along with that and see if I can pick up a few things that will help with the food safety flow. But yeah, just trying to keep the bins off the ground. And then I have like one of those little 5-gallon salad spinners. I would love to have a greens washer, but we don't have electricity where we are. And so I can't do anything that's not manual. Which means in the fall, I am actually washing by headlamp sometimes, which is not my favorite.
When it comes to food safety, there will be some additional workshops coming up this season. And I will hopefully email everybody about that and keep you in the loop, and move on to Juanita's question. So she wanted to know, who were your main customers during your first year of operation and how did you get them?
Sorry, I have a foot cramp that just happened. Okay. So I guess I'm lucky in that I had a lot of work outside of the farming world prior to going more full-time into farming. And so like I've taught, I still continue to teach part-time. I have like my synagogue up in Seattle that I'm very engaged in. And so I had some built-in networks of groups of people who weren't farmers, which I know for some farmers can be challenging because like they're like, oh, my friends are farmers. But I had built-in networks of folks that I just was able to mostly sell to friends and family the first year, those 20 shares, which was really quite excellent as a first year option. But I will say since then, so I didn't even bother to make my website my first year. Like I really, really kept it minimal my first year. I didn't want people to be able to find me unless they knew me because I was a little nervous about how it was gonna go. But that second winter I made, or the winter after my first year, I used all those photos to make a website. And I made sure to get myself listed on as many sites as possible. So at that point it was Pierce County Fresh. Now it's Eat Local First was huge. That was like my first SEO bump that helped me actually look like I was a legitimate business. I actually had a handful of people find me that way last year. I also listed with Local Harvest, and I've had a number of people find me that way. The new Eat Local First initiative has been doing a lot of work, getting out the word. I don't know if I don't know if they were involved in like the Stranger up in Seattle doing a list of every CSA farm that they could find in the area, but that happened recently and I've had a number of farmers sign up from that. I also asked
that's great.
sign up how they heard about it if they're new. This is the upside of Google Forms is I can ask people whatever I want when they're signing up. So I do a little extra information gathering in that initial sign up. But yeah, that was, definitely reaching out to your friend networks is awesome. But I put out, once I'd figured out where I was going to have my pickup sites, I put out announcements in some of the bulletins in local organizations like churches and synagogues where people were gathering. Every year I think about just doing a door walking and putting flyers on people's doors in a certain radius of where I have drop sites, but then I sell out and so I haven't needed to do that yet, but it could happen, right? You could put things. I know Rising River, when they were expanding some new sites, I would see their signs just put up on telephone poles in neighborhoods where they were going to be selling. And so, yeah, but you definitely want to have a nice website front that looks professional if you're doing that. And also, again, the cross listing is really important. So I feel like a lot of people check that to make sure I'm real.
Follow-up question regarding the auction site. Hannah said there was a specific item that you mentioned and she's not sure what it was, some kind of track, Dunna tracks?
Oh, I just learned about this from a National Young Farmers, I think this is how it's spelled, like food safety thing, but this is really common, I guess, in the restaurant world, restaurant and catering. so if you type it in and look them up, they're just these low-lying, really easy to clean, like things. It's like a plastic version of a pallet that lifts stuff off the ground, but they're really easy to sanitize. And so in a lot of like warehouse and restaurant spaces, they'll use them to get food products off the floor.
All right, so we had one other question that was kind of related to when you're just starting out about your initial subscribers. This is kind of a question for like how to do a farm plan, which is a different workshop. But if you have some quick answers on how do you plan for how much to plant based on your subscriptions.
Ooh, yeah, that's a doozy. So again, it would be really cool if I if I like had multiple sales channels. As a basically primarily CSA farmer, I really have to get my numbers right and I have to get my timing right. Not everyone needs to do it this way. I know people who do it with pen and paper like incredibly successfully, but for me, I'll do a quick screen share just to, for me, I am like visual, and also by late July, my brain stops working. So I make one of these each year. That just, and maybe I won't need to do this as precisely when I've been doing it for longer, but this kind of was really helpful. So basically this is organized by like week and location, and it tells me what I'm doing and when things are going to be harvestable. So the first year I like went through every single row and made up like a mock CSA box of what theoretically could be harvested that week. And I identified any weird gaps I had and then worked backwards to make sure I was planting things. As far as amounts, you can find those numbers. Johnny's actually has really good planting calculators and production numbers. If you've grown like if you've been working on a farm or your own farm, you can just kind of do quick a field assessment and kind of get a sense in 5 feet what you're able to pull out. I know I've been like trying to get a better sense of how many sprouting broccolis I need to plant to actually give everyone broccoli. And so like doing a quick survey can be helpful. Sometimes I'll plant a test crop just like in a little patch one year, like 5 feet, just to kind of get a sense of the production number for the following year so that I know how much I need to plant out. But I also was really lucky in that I had a couple of local farms straight up share their crop plans with me when I got started, which was huge. And there were farms that cater to CSA in addition to markets, but getting a sense of their numbers and timing was a really helpful, like it saved me hundreds of hours. I still put in a lot of like 100+ hours, but it saved me hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Yeah, I would also recommend to folks, I think at least one person on this call is attending currently, but WSU Extension puts on Cultivating Success course every year. I think they even do it sometimes more than once a year. And it's basically just a primer to starting a farm business and covers some of that and also just the business management side of things. And Emily dropped a really great resource in the chat. Go ahead, Jillian.
I was just pulling up that link. Cool. Okay. I love that.
And
yeah,
then
I also, there's what is it? There's like a book that came, I didn't end up buying it. I just read through it at a friend's house, but it was a book about like small acreage farming. Can anybody remember the name of that? It's like
there's a lot of books.
I don't know, it was like Footprint Farms or something, but basically it had like actual crop plans from 14 tiny farms, like under 3 acres. Cool. And that was like fun to peruse. As another plug for sort of a business one, I did the Enterprise for Equity. In the winter time every year, they do a food and farm focused business course, and that was also super helpful. It didn't give me production numbers necessarily, but it was really helpful in figuring out like the business and admin side of the farm. So I'll just also put that one in because
Great. There was one final question from Juanita, and then we're going to shift gears here. Regarding food safety and protecting yourself and your farm, are you listed as an LLC? I'll answer that for my farm. Yes. I raise meat, which is a higher risk, but we did not establish an LLC until we bought our own farm. And the main reason to have an LLC is to protect your assets in case of a problem. And so before we owned our farm, we really had no assets to protect. It's still probably a good idea, especially if you do own. So I know Juanita, you farm out of your house. I don't know if you own your house, but if you do, yeah, you probably should have. Of course, like microgreens are going to be lower risk than raw chicken, but it's also kind of expensive to do, and you have to have a lawyer help you with that. So there's some things to consider. Do you have an LLC, Jillian?
So I don't. I considered it, but it was kind of a similar consideration where I figure at some point I will, but at this point I'm leasing. I own very little, and it is an extra level of admin, and so yeah, I started out as a sole proprietorship with the idea that at some point I was probably going to transition to an LLC. But also my first year, I was only selling to people I knew, which is an incredibly low risk way to start. And I am like very careful about food safety. I would hate to make anyone sick, but yeah, generally I have pretty relatively safe market channels as well. And I'm growing vegetables, so
yeah, and Noah brings up a good point about product liability insurance. So that's another way to protect yourself. The admin side of an LLC, for me, like I just pay my lawyer to file it every year. So that's the admin's low, but then there's that cost every year. So there's some really great resources coming up in the chat here. So I thank you, Jillian, so much. That was so much awesome information. I know people are learning a lot. And now I'm going to switch over to Liz. So for those of you who are looking at growing or expanding in the future into a bigger CSA, Liz Kramps came to Jubilee Farm 10 years ago from a career in healthcare admin. While she has worked in varying capacities at the farm, for the last 5 years, she has managed their year-round CSA. Jubilee Farm is a diverse 221-acre farm, or 220-acre farm in the Snoqualmie Valley, with about 30 acres in production, growing vegetables, fruits, and herbs for their CSA, as well as raising beef, pork, and chickens for eggs and meat. Jubilee Farm CSA offers both on-farm pickup and depot delivery, which I'm excited to find out what that is, for their traditional 20-week summer session, and depot delivery for only their 8-week fall, winter, and spring sessions. The summer session hovers around 500 shares, and the forward sessions max out at about 200 shares. So that's their small size, is 200. And Liz is happy to share insight into what has worked and not worked for her when managing a CSA, and what options to consider as folks look to expand their own CSAs. A successful CSA is certainly about delivering excellent produce, but possibly more so about delivering excellent customer service, which I think all of us can agree. And you are on, Liz.
All right, let's see if I can share a screen. How about that? Jillian, that was awesome. Now I feel like I'm going to repeat a lot of information, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Hold on.
What's happening? Are you seeing the right button?
I think so.
There you go.
There I am. Hold on. Let me get my pork sales thing out of here. Hold on. All right. Does that work? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it. I think you probably still want to put it in presentation mode. Maybe?
Oh, is it not in?
It might be.
Am I just
What
not
happens
in?
if you can you navigate to the next slide? Oh, yep. Looks great.
Come on. All right, you might still see all of these things up here. That's fine. All right, so who are we? We are Jubilee Farm. Our CSA runs 44 weeks out of the year. Our main summer session is 20 weeks, and we are 350 to 500 members. I guess we can start with the history. We started the CSA, Eric Hawkinson started Jubilee Farm 30 years ago and started the CSA in 1996. And it started with about 35 members. So that's 25 years ago. So it's taken us 25 years to get to 350 to 500 members. We were the second CSA in Washington State behind Root Connection up in Redmond. And somehow we've made it work this whole time. So what we do in the summer months, we do farm pickup. So we do a market style pickup where people come out to the farm and pick up their veggies, and we lay it out just like a market style. We also do like a U-pick section just for our members, so that when people come pick up at the farm, they have an added bonus to come to the farm, be on the farm. We encourage people to come in and hang out for like the whole day. That also requires probably some insurance for folks to have so many people on the farm with you. And for our summer CSA, we are 100% Jubilee produce. So everything that we offer in the summer months is from the farm. Now, we also do 3 8-week, what we call off-season sessions. My cat's here. That are a little bit smaller. They are depot delivery only. Misha, you wanted to know about depot delivery. So we do, in the off season, we have about 17 locations that we deliver to, and they are mostly member houses and a few businesses. So it's an agreement with either our CSA members or another business to deliver boxes to their front porch or some covered area that is out of the elements. That makes it easy for us to just drop and go. And then people come to those houses and pick up. And for those smaller sessions, we do as much as we can for produce from the farm, but we also bring in outside produce from other area farmers, or sometimes we work with larger distribution to go as far as Oregon. In case you don't know, Jubilee Farm is in a floodplain, and so come October, we can go underwater fairly regularly. So it kind of really affects our ability to have fresh produce throughout the winter. Now, you might say, why would we do an off-season session if we can't grow the food year-round? And our feeling was that if you can provide something, it keeps Jubilee in people's minds. So if people are willing to work with us, it's still supporting the farm. We still usually have root crops and things like that. And then it keeps people in the routine of getting a box every week for most of the year, except for like 8 weeks of January and February that we don't do it. So that's what we do. In addition to the CSA, we also do an October pumpkin patch. So that's always a lot of fun. It's, not something that a lot of folks are going to be able to do, but it is a great way to get people on the farm and asking about the CSA, to do other little events and things like that. Next. So I guess when you're thinking of growing your CSA, there seems to be 2 kind of ways to go about it. And there's customized shares, or there's traditional CSA style. And we do just a traditional CSA style. What we found So I've been doing this job for almost, it'll be 6 years at the end of this summer. And what we've found is that the more customization that we did, the more room for error there was. So people would request all sorts of things. So we didn't do, traditional customization. We would offer to people to let us know what items they didn't want. So what would happen is people would say, I don't want kale, turnips, beets, rutabaga, and all the things that you find in like a fall box. And so it got to be really hard for us to replace those things with other items. And so it became this beast of every week we spent so much time trying to find other items to replace everything that was in the box. And so people were getting like a box of potatoes with like a side of onions, and that's it. Not that bad. And also it just increased the room for error. So we do between like 175 to 200 boxes in the off season, and that has grown in the last couple of years, either through just a interest in CSAs or COVID or whatever. It used to be a little bit smaller. We found that the more customizing that we did, and this may be a reflection on us too, the more room for error. So if someone didn't want parsnips and we put parsnips in their box, then they would email us and say, hey, you put parsnips in my box and I'm supposed to be no parsnips. And then we'd have to, fix that problem the next week. So the more customization we did, the more we tend to screw things up. But again, that could be totally a problem of ours and not yours. We also found that people were not, and this is totally coming from like a traditional CSA take on things, people were not eating as seasonal. And that's one of the things that we really like to promote. Like, so in the fall, the winter, the spring, when things are not always available, it's not always going to be a box of tomatoes and cucumbers and broccoli and wonderful things. It's going to be harder vegetables to swallow. And so people didn't want those vegetables. They still wanted to be part of the CSA, but they didn't want those vegetables. And so it became a lot more labor intensive for us to do that. It became a lot more time in front of the computer for me to do that, to figure out what we were going to swap, where we were going to get things to swap things out of. And so over the last, I don't know, I'd say like 3 years, I've really cut down on preference customization. And so if someone emails and they say, hey, I have an allergy to alliums or, something else, then we let them do that. So it's mostly we customize now just for dietary restrictions or allergies, and that's it. And when you're doing 200 to 500 boxes, that's kind of what you need to do. What I do like about customized shares is that there is a potential for appealing to more people. Jillian, I think you talked about chicories, and it's something like chicories. You can't put chicories in a box 6 weeks in a row. People will turn against you and they will be very sad and they will email you and tell you about it. Even though chicories are great and I could eat them every day for like 3 weeks. So customization is great in that it appeals to people that are not familiar with chicories, so they can not get escarole in their box if they don't want it. It's good for bringing folks in that are on the fence about CSAs. If people think I don't want a box of turnips and radicchio, then they can choose to not have a box of turnips and radicchio. Luckily, a lot of the newer CSA management programs, unfortunately, they're probably the higher price ones, like that Jillian put in there, are really geared towards that and make it a lot easier to do customized shares. And I think that if you weren't as large as we are and somewhere in the middle of like 50 to like even like 150, 200 people, you could probably handle more customization a lot easier than we can. So what we try to do, since we do a traditional CSA, what we really try to focus on is help our members be successful. But we also know that not everyone is going to succeed. The CSA is not going to be the right choice for everyone. Some people are meant to go to a farmer's market. Some people are meant to get vegetables at the grocery store. And that's fine. That, you know, it's not a personal attack if a CSA member doesn't make it through the season. And we've had to come to terms with that. But when you do have successful CSA members, you have this thing called member retention, which is great. Which, if you can keep your people coming back every year, it means that you don't have to search for them every year or every season. Some of the things we do a weekly newsletter with recipes and tips. So I sit down and I write every week a little, what we call the box letter. And it has a couple little recipes, a couple little things about the different vegetables. If there's something weird in the box each week, we focus on that. So if there was the chicory, or right now we're starting to see some robs and things like that that are coming out that maybe people don't know about. So we focus on those vegetables so that they can have some extra ideas when they're cooking all their vegetables. What we do in the summer as well, now COVID kind of threw us for a loop last year with the on-farm pickup, but normally we have on-farm pickup on the farm. So if you're within an area where, you know, we're 25 minutes from Seattle, so it's not a huge drive for folks if they're coming from the city. We also get a lot of the east side folks coming out to the farm. So on-farm pickup is kind of amazing for people to come out to get to chat with us. And so it's kind of like going to the farmer's market, but it's still your CSA. And they really get a sense of like ownership of the farm. So they're able to come out, walk around, see things, see how we grow things, you know, talk to us. In not COVID years, we have 2 women that come in and they do demos for us, and they, you know, make a couple little recipes and have little ideas. And we've opened up our barn so that people can wash their produce in the barn before they go home, so that when they go home, they can just pop it right into the fridge and not have to then get home and process everything, which has been great. Not everyone uses it, but enough people use it that it really helps them. Another thing we've done is make it a private Facebook group. There is a Facebook group that right now I can't remember the name of it. It's like CSA marketing or something. And it's been really helpful, even for us, just to give like tips and things like that, and just kind of like crowdsource ideas when you're growing. And I know that for us, it hasn't been super helpful, but I know that there's a lot of smaller CSAs on there that talk about, you know, different packaging and different ways to increase numbers and things like that. And I see a lot of success for folks on that group. I can probably figure it out before the end of all of this and share it with you guys. Another thing that we do for our folks, just to keep them as part of the farm, we want to build a community of being a Jubilee CSA member, is member-only events. But again, dang it, COVID. So in the past, we've done potlucks and things like that, and hopefully in the future we can get back to that. I know that there is some issue with insurance and having people on your farm, and insurance folks don't like having people on your farm because there's a lot of heavy equipment and things like that and whatnot. But I think that if you do private events as opposed to public events, then you can kind of skirt around some of that. Since we do the pumpkin patch in October, we pay a lot for insurance, so we can have people out, and it's great. So that's how we run our CSA. what I do is mostly behind the scenes. So we use Local Food Marketplace, which is a smaller CSA management platform. They're actually based out of Oregon. We had been using Small Farm Central, which turned into Harvey, since 2013. And they, as the years went on, they kind of decided that they wanted to focus on Harvey and not focus on like the little, it was called Member Assembler or something like that. And within the last like 2 years, they've made it clear that they were no longer going to support Member Assembler. And so that we needed to find a new place to go. And so we found Local Food Marketplace, and they seem, for our purposes, seem to be the most affordable and the easiest to work with. I think we paid annually, but I think it breaks down to about $150 a month. And they don't charge for any like additional percentage, like I know like Harvey does and Farmigo both charge like a 2 or 7% based on your sales, which we didn't really like. I didn't want someone taking our money away from us. We still have to pay credit card, percentage and all that kind of fun stuff, but it's just a flat $150 a month for us with Local Food Marketplace. They do, for us, they do a really bare bones kind of deal because we aren't doing customization, but they do customize, and they set you can set your storefront up with all the items that you want. So members can go in every week if they want to and order what they want, and you can do it like that, or you can do like what we do with just the traditional CSA style. And you can also do add-ons. So you can have the traditional CSA style. I'd like to get like an egg add-on added for the summer. We can also incorporate our beef sales. So we do like quarter half cows and things like that. And we can have that added so that people can use the same website that they do use to sign up for the CSA. They can order a quarter cow when we have it available, and which is fantastic. We haven't done it yet. It's new. So we've just moved to Local Food Marketplace this year. I know that they worked with some of the farmers markets and things over the last year with COVID and having to pre-order things. So they're familiar with local folks to the Pacific Northwest, which is great. And they have awesome customer service. They're super responsive. Not that I'm just plugging Local Food Marketplace, but they seem to be one of the better ones. What I would suggest is schedule demos. We did a couple demos with a couple different places, and there's more to it, I feel like, than just what's going to work for you. The folks at Local Food Marketplace were very personal, and whereas from other places, I didn't feel like they really cared. I kind of got the impression from speaking to the folks at Harvey that they weren't super into having us succeed. They kind of told us that we were very antiquated with the traditional CSA model and that there was no future for it. And that kind of sat strangely with me. So we went with someone else. All that said, I think that if you're small, like I said, like if you have more than like 100 people or so, I would say 100, 150, you probably want to look into some of the CSA marketing stuff. If you're super techie and you don't want to spend, you're able to do like a Shopify. I know people that use like a WordPress site with a Shopify account and do that kind of stuff. And if you're willing to put that work in, if you can do that, or you can tweak Squarestore to do it, by all means, go for it. If you're not, it's really nice to have like a one-stop shop that just does it all for you. I can go in, I would show you my screenshots, but then it comes into like customer information and I don't feel like showing my whole customer list, everything. But it prints my labels for me. It prints all of my pickup locations. It's great. I love it. So all that said, I think that managing the CSA probably takes me like 10 to 15 hours a week. And that's for, 200 to 500 people. And that probably includes emails and all that kind of stuff. And answering the email of, is this a turnip or a white beet? Because trust me, we still get those. I think the last one was, they wanted to know what a celery root and a sunchoke were because they had no idea what it was. And I think without using a CSA management software in our position, that it would probably take twice as long to do all of that. And for me, maybe even longer because I'm not super savvy.
Hey, Liz, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about local food marketplace. I know a little bit more about Harvey, and I know that Harvey, one of the services you're paying for is that they do some of those customer communications for you. Do you have, does local food marketplace handle some of those customer inquiries to kind of take that off your plate?
No.
No. Okay.
And we didn't, that was one of the things that we did not want. I think that, I don't know, I think especially starting out to have someone like a third party managing your emails with your customers isn't necessarily what you want to do. I think that you should, the farmer or, people with the farm should be the ones answering, but that's just my personal opinion. I think that it would be great if that was fine. Like, I don't know, it could work probably really well if they answered some questions, but people get to know me. And so it's nice when one person answers the question and then you get to meet that person. It's amazing when people come into the farm and they say, oh my gosh, you're Liz. And it's nice to put like a name and a face and not just, someone who's in Pennsylvania or wherever Harvey is answering your questions. But again, that's just me. I think some of the other things that we use our CSA management software for that are big, we can schedule vacation holds, which is nice. And so people can just put the dates in that they won't be around, and it won't print labels for them. It won't include it in our numbers, and we don't have to keep track of it. It keeps track of all of the numbers for each pickup day. So we do, in the summer, we have 3 farm pickup days and 1 delivery day. And 2 harvest days. So then I know what we need to harvest on Tuesday, what we need to harvest on Friday, based on the numbers that we have for our Tuesday pickup, Wednesday deliveries, Friday pickup, and Saturday pickup. And it just prints. I just say print, and it's great. Local food marketplace and probably most of the other software platforms do weekly pickup reminders, so that people remember to go get their box. And we also have a credit card processor built in through it, which is great. We used to do, when Harvey was Small Farm Central, we did PayPal, and it was fine, except that people could also use their own personal PayPal account to just send it to the farm. And so we would get some payments through Small Farm Central, and then we would also get people who would just send it from like their business account. So it didn't necessarily match up. So there was a lot of time spent on my end trying to match payments with names. Or they sent it from like their wife's PayPal account or their husband's PayPal account or someone else's PayPal account to a different name. And it was a lot of wasted energy. Now, at least with Small Farm Central, we control when the credit card payments go. So people can sign up and they can either do credit card, they can do like an e-check, or they can just mail a check to the farm if they've had to do that. And then on a specific day, so like if someone signed up right now for our summer session, it would say that their money would be processed on April 1st. So I do the first of every month. And so come April 1st, I would run all of the new signups for our summer CSA. And then that goes into the bank. And I know exactly that that wad of money is for the summer CSA. So we try to keep track of, since we do year round, we try and keep track of like what money is for what season, because that helps us a lot in our accounting. If you're not doing credit card payments, then you don't have to worry about it. And there's definitely an option. So if you'd rather just have people mail you a check, then by all means, you can do that. That is just about everything that I do with the CSA. I don't know if there's questions. I don't know if I should, anything else?
Yeah, that was awesome. Do you have any more slides? Is that your last slide?
That is my last slide.
Cool. Yeah, so I definitely want to open it up for folks to ask you questions. And then I know that there are other farmers on this call that have varying sizes of CSAs and using different platforms. So Emily uses Harvey, so I know we have a Harvey expert on the call. Katie, if you're there, what platform do you use? I actually don't know. Katie Green.
I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out how to get on here.
We hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I use, it's not advisable, and I'm really excited to hear about the tool that Liz is using, because it's what I wish I could have used. I have a Squarespace website currently that I have set up to do everything. We used to use CSA and we used it for a couple of years, and then I got tired of the expense. Because for our farm, most of our folks are coming on site, so I was paying a commission to make their software work for me. And so some of that is also something I would take into account. If you are seeing your customers face to face, paying for the web interface might not be as advantageous if most people are going to turn around and try to hand you a check or Venmo you anyway. So right now, I have a Squarespace website that's robust and that I've used up until now fully. And now we're in the situation where we have a waiting list, and I can't just post online freely to sell shares because the world changed. And that's something I'm hoping that maybe Liz or Jillian or anybody else here that has experience kind of working through those issues can speak to. Because right now, what I kind of done is have a Google form set up where people can resubscribe for me for who are my current and returning folks. And then I'm invoicing everybody individually through Square. And it's a big commitment of time, but I'm just promising myself that I'm not going to be doing that all summer long instead, and trying to just be at peace with that. So yeah, what do you got?
Katie, can I ask you, do you need your current Squarespace thing active? Because I actually made when my CSA was only open to members, for example, or just like when it's post waitlist time, I removed the link from my main website to the sign up page, but I keep it in a different like hidden tab in my website that doesn't actually have anywhere in the menu. And then I send people the direct link to the storefront. I basically like move the storefront from being linked in the menu to like just being a page on my in my domain.
That's what I'm going to do for brand new folks. What the issue that I've run into is we also do we do eggs, and eggs are a hot commodity, and I can't offer them to everybody all the time. And so having to work in the inventory management piece, we're an example of a farm that has a really sizable CSA these days, but for whatever reason, we still operate as a very personal and we still make those swaps one-on-one and do all of these things and have all of these trappings of it, whether that's good or not. And it kind of snuck up on us. And I don't know if a lot of folks have had that experience as well, you know, in the past year where you've been operating one way and it's been great and you've been able to manage your customer base in one way, and then suddenly it's that much bigger and you're still trying to be the same personable, bright-eyed person that you're bright-eyed. I was not to me, but you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed person that you always were. You know, and able to help out and answer those questions about what is this? What did I get in my box? Meanwhile, you have 400 other emails legitimately sitting in your email inbox because everybody else is working at home. So those are, I don't know if that's so much of a question, but you know, what, how do you guys manage, you know, waiting lists and supply of those limited items that are not freely available to everybody all the time? Any insights there? Or are the software pieces helpful with those customizations? You know, have you had any successes, any failures, any wisdom to impart? All ears.
I mean, we had a waiting list last year, and it was the first time that we've had a waiting list. Up until recent years, we never closed the CSA. So it was just kind of rolling admissions all along. We'd end up maxing out about maybe like between 400 to 450 or so, maybe like 400. And then last year we upped it to 450. And last year was the first year that we had a waiting list. And I think at the end of, like by midsummer, it was like 200 people, which is just, I mean, it's unrealistic. And so going into this year, you know, I'm not going to add another 200 people. I can't. We don't have enough space. So like we might have 200 acres, but we're growing on 30, and that's what we can support. And so we had to come to terms with that like, I can't do it. And so now we've limited our CSA. I think we're at like 440 or something like that right now. I'm going to cut it off at 450. And I have like 25 spots for, I don't know, as you know, maybe it's not the best way to do it, but for like the people that are our long-term customers that I know are going to email in like June 2nd and be like, oh my God, I can't, you know, what happened? I've been a member for 20 years. And, you know, and I can take a few emails, and I've saved a few, but I just, you know, I can't justify having a 200-person email waiting list because, and we did it on Google Forms last year because it was the first time, and it was overwhelming to just see the people coming in. And I tried as much as I could to send them to other CSAs to share the wealth, but you know, I think a lot of it had to do with COVID. So I'm hoping that maybe it's not as rampant, but I feel your pain.
Katie, have you talked to Raleigh about that? I know he does a predominantly, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he and I on the weekly.
Okay. I was
Miserating.
gonna ask Emily, if you want to chime in. I don't know if you have the waiting list issue, but I know you have add-ons to your CSA that have limited quantity. And so do you want to speak to how Harvey manages that?
Yeah, so I guess, so we have about like between 60 and 80 different customers. And I guess it's, the main reason I went with Harvey is it's like extremely customizable. And so I guess that helps me because like if we have limited quantities of bags or whatever, it is first come, first serve. And so I guess how it works is, so we have 2 share days that have 2 pickup sites each on those days. And so about 36 hours before pickup, I have a harvest inventory that I input. And then after it's done, people who have signed up have theoretically put in preferences. And so Harvey will use their algorithm and make boxes that they're pretty sure someone will like. And so it really helps if you have like limited stuff because they've already ranked their preferences. And then the algorithm also knows like who's gotten it before. And so like they might select another person if that item has gotten, like a limited item has gotten with someone before. So sort of seems more fair, I guess. And then once the box has been made by Harvey, the customer has, usually it's between 18 and 24 hours, sort of on my end, I guess, when I push that email out, that they can swap in stuff or add extras. And so it's during that like customization period that people can add eggs or flowers or bread or like whatever that is left over from the inventory, I guess. And so I would say I'm surprised how much extra people buy.
And so they would have to sign up for eggs every week rather than the
No.
whole season? Oh, they sign
So
up
you
for the whole season?
Yeah, so you can sign up for, it's very flexible for people. So some people know they want eggs every week or every other week. And so there is that option at the beginning where you can add like an egg share. And then we always have like extra eggs. So say there's like 20 egg shares that are set a week, but we'll buy in like 30 dozen eggs. And then so those extra 10 will show up in like the inventory and people can add. And so I guess we have people who they have signed up for one egg share, but they'll always, if they see their extra eggs, like they'll just add them all. I don't know, I guess that's like really the
So
item that
then
people like the most.
the other thing that Katie was talking about was, and it's interesting hearing, right, with like totally understanding Liz's position that sorry, yes, go ahead, have whatever you want. It's my toddler, she's gonna go eat who knows what, cat food. So Liz really wants to be the person answering those customer emails. She doesn't want to pay someone else to do that. They have a relationship with her. But also Liz's whole job is managing the CSA, right?
Yeah.
Katie, your job is everything. So well, I know you're not everything, but you're the business owner, right? So as a business owner, I know how struggling it can be to do all of that. And so I think, Emily, maybe you can talk to the benefits of having Harvey handle some of those customer interactions. Like, have you felt like the relationship with your customers has changed at all? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Is it better for your admin? Can you talk to that a little?
Yeah, so I guess that was really, so the two reasons why I decided to go with the platform was like, I am terrible at office work. I wish I am better, but I knew that Harvey could handle basic things like people setting up an account, people like, they just email Harvey support if like in your account, you can decide what weeks you want to be on vacation. And we allow like 3 vacation weeks, like no penalty, or you can choose to donate that week, whatever. And even though it's like, I feel very clear like how to set up your vacation holds, some of our older customers find it confusing, and so they can just interact with the customer service. And I guess I don't feel like it's, they're really happy because it's resolved like within an hour versus it takes me sometimes a long time to get back to my email. So I really like that. And then I guess the other sort of thing that I also like, this is also better for the customer, but they offer a number of different types of payment plans. And so I would say like 80% of our customers will do, when you sign up, you pay 25%. The first week of drops, you pay another 25%, and then your remaining 50% balance is split up to a charge every week that you pick up. So it's not that huge, like $800 at the beginning of the year, but it's like just enough for me to feel like the benefit of having that early season money. So, and because like, I feel like that type of payment schedule is really onerous for me to do the admin for, and so it's automatic. And then I guess the other thing is because like it's an account that is like you have like linked your credit card or PayPal account for, it's super easy for people to add extras because like it's like they don't have to like actually do that transaction. So another nice thing.
And I wonder, Katie, it came up in the chat. I think Kelly was asking about EBT. So I know your farm takes EBT. And do you take it for your CSA shares as well as the farm store or just in the store?
Yes, we do. We accept it for CSA payment and for shoppers in the store. As far as I know right now, although I think Amazon is doing it now, they can accept EBT. But my understanding was that for EBT transactions, you had to have PIN-based in-person kind of interaction. And so there was not yet a platform that had permission to do PIN-based transactions related to EBT as of yet. So, you know, people like Square or PayPal do not yet have that capacity. At least the bigger ones, you know, like those two don't. So yes, it's something that you'd have to figure out how to be able to do that offsite. That being said, Annika Moran, the Tacoma Farmers Market, the executive director, with their mobile market project last year, I think they had figured out a way of kind of circumventing that a little bit, maybe with vouchers or some other way of processing that payment. So people are coming up with creative ways of handling that piece of the processing, though you still have to individually apply as a business to receive EBT and SNAP benefits. You do that through the USDA, and the process takes about a month. And then if it is something that you're interested in doing, there is kind of a monthly fee that, depending on the year and depending on your situation, sometimes there's a program that will help you purchase that equipment, particularly for farmers markets. There are a lot of incentives for them to have access to that equipment, but there are fees, and I pay probably close to $200 a year to be able to accept EBT. And I use an app through our same iPad register now, called Total Pay, and I run it there. But yeah, that's its own kind of a thing, and there's a lot of room for growth there, but it's just not as accessible.
I just threw in the chat. I think like everything Katie said still applies. The in-person piece with this grant, I'm not sure about. I tried to call them and didn't get clarification. But the like yearly fee is a thing. I may have remembered it wrong. It may be $195, not $95. But if you are wanting to accept EBT, you should definitely go to MarketLink. They have a grant. They have detailed instructions on how to get your business registered. The grant will cover the actual equipment, like the reader, and then the first year of the software that you have to use, but you will have to cover that afterwards.
That's awesome. Thanks. I'm going to check that out for myself. So it sounds like for you, Katie, I wonder if you did choose to use one of these platforms for your customers, you'd have to kind of have two separate customer categories, those that you're maybe doing invoicing differently because they're EBT, and those that are doing online invoicing. Liz or Emily, like let's say you have a customer on your platform and they mail you a check instead of paying online. Is there a way you can go in and just update it as paid?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have any other questions? Do you feel like we helped you, Katie? Do you have any idea of what you're going to do?
I mean, yes, I think I'm, along with Liz, hoping that it simmers down a little bit, because you don't want to be disingenuous with your customer base. You want to make the most of that enthusiasm in the moment and be able to help people out. But I also do think, and Liz, you can tell me if you experience this too. And, for those of you out there who do multiple season CSAs, and that's part of our struggle too, Because you have folks who jump in and out, you know, for part of the seasons, and then you have some people that are there every single season and are used to the way that it's been and have been with you a long time. And so it's as much trying to balance those two types of cultures, you know, the people who have been with you, you know, since the beginning, when you started out, you know, in one way, and then suddenly you have a very different set of circumstances. And so still trying to meet the needs and, you know, and really value those people who've been with you since day one, but then also leaving the door open for new folks, leaving the door open for people who just want to join you for summer, to be able to still do that, even if they haven't been there with you for winter and spring, without shutting them out, because those people that join you for winter and spring still want to do summer, by the way. These kinds of things I think are, you know, they've always been issues, but, you know, like you, Liz, we always had a rolling kind of enrollment, you know, situation. And then suddenly I came in from the field one day and we had, you know, almost 400 CSA members for the summer last year. And
I remember it was last April that all of a sudden David, who now owns the farm, called me and he said, "What happened?" Because they literally just like that, all of a sudden, like 100 new CSA members signed up.
Yeah.
And,
and we absorbed it.
Yeah.
We waded through it. We made totally drastic decisions about the rest of our business, but we've gradually then tried to meet that demand season by season. But it's why you both want to be able to leave the door open, but then also, I mean, this is a different sort of a challenge than when you're starting. But I think it's one that a lot of us are going to be facing. You know, there's increased interest in CSAs. There are lots of people standing behind it. Organizations, you know, all over our region really are looking out for us and what we're doing. But holy smokes, like, what do you do? I mean, you have to say yes, you have to say no, and maybe I just need to be better at saying no and get more used to that. But
that was a huge thing over the last year, is being able to say no and being able to be okay with that, because we had a lot of people, like, so last year we switched delivery. We split our delivery into Wednesday and Saturday. We always did just a Wednesday delivery, but in light of COVID, we raised our delivery numbers and added a Saturday delivery. And the pushback we got from people about having a Saturday delivery and how it didn't work for them and it was horrible and I can't believe you've done this to us. And it's really hard to not personalize it, but you can't.
I understand the struggle, because I have also come from a very small business to something that is medium sized, and the customer interaction is very different, and people will come and say, "Wow, you've changed so much," and sometimes they sound a little bit sad about it, but it's also like, well, I wasn't actually successful when you first met me, right? That's why I can spend a lot of time talking to you. And I think that as you get bigger, the customer service can't suffer, but maybe that's a piece that you have to start hiring out, right? And if that is hiring somebody like Liz, or if that's going through a platform like Harvey where somebody is helping just take some of that administrative load off of you, that might really be worth, because as farmers, we never ever value our time accurately, right? If you look at how many hours you're spending on that and how many hours you should really be getting paid as a business owner to do that kind of stuff, it's never gonna equate what it should be. And so it's always hard the first time you make that purchase. It's like, oh, that's so expensive. But just like hiring your first employee is always so scary. And then you do it and you're like, how did I ever do this without an employee? You know, I think sometimes it's just that if you're at that stage, you have to take that leap. And I don't know, Emily, you seem pretty happy with it. Liz, you seem pretty happy with your platform. Jillian's still doing the DIY thing, but she's on the border.
I have spent at least 20, if not 30. There's a reason I could make that little like research sheet. I have done demos with so many companies and I'm like, I'm not quite big enough to make it work, but it's on my docket. We are very much at the edge of the size where this really works manually for customizable.
It also looks like Hope has mentioned barn to door. So I don't know if anybody else is using barn to door. I know
people who are using barn to door, they don't do any customization. So like they're just out. For me, they spent a lot of time trying to convince me I just don't want to allow customizable shares, which irked me. But I hate it when the platform tells me that I'm like bad at business. I'm like, no, I'm doing fine. But I know
It's
people
more
who
like
are
a,
it's
sorry.
really good for like a online farm stand. So if that's a big piece of your business, it makes, I know a lot of people switch to it who are doing in-person sales because it allowed them to pre-pack and pre-take orders, and it let them harvest to number. And they do let you do vacation scheduling, which is nice, and they like do handle the payments, but I don't, for non-customized shares, I just don't find that part all that onerous. Like if you're doing a straight share with, I mean, unless you get to 400, which like, that's a world I can't even imagine. But it's like, if you know, I've got like 50 straight shares, I don't really need their help on that piece, but it's great for add-ons. It's great for, it's like a nice platform. They charge people whenever they pick up.
I would say if you're using barn to door, be very cognizant of how your storefront looks to the consumer. Because I have been on some barn to door websites and had some confusion about it. Like if you have multiple subscriptions with multiple delivery options, it can just get very confusing and they all kind of look the same. So if you're building something like that out, just make sure you're constantly looking at it from the perspective of a consumer, and have friends and family go in and check too to see if it's clear, because we all know the back end, and so we're like, it's so obvious, but other people really don't see that stuff. So I think, I mean, we have time if there's any other questions. Otherwise I feel like, oh, do you have something, Stephen?
Yeah, I just have a question. This is my first season. I'm planning on for a 10 share CSA. So I was wondering, could I just like tell you all my like brainstorm right now and see what you think?
Sure.
So I planned for about 9 to 13 items per week. Then I was thinking maybe like, because this is my first season, so I may not be like precise on like harvest dates and all that. And then on Sundays, I work a farmer's market. So I was thinking maybe like 7 to 9 items in a CSA each week, or maybe like fewer items than have add-ons through barn to door, then any excess selling at the farmer's market. Would is 7 to 9 items like a good number, or is that too much if there are add-ons as an option?
I think that's pretty standard. We do, from our perspective, we do 3 different share sizes. So we do a half share, a 3/4 share, and a full share. Our half share is probably like 4 to 5 items. Our 3/4 share, which is kind of like our standard, is probably like 7 to 9. And then the full share is like 10 to 12. And that varies. At the height of the season, we probably give more than we need to. And that's one of like our #1 comments at the end of the year, is that there's too much food. And a reason that people don't come back to us. So be careful of too much food, because people don't want to waste.
Yeah, Noah just put the same thing in the chat. Noah also ran a 10-person CSA their first year. I think they've sized up since then, but also said people get stressed out by too much food. And I've noticed it depends a little bit where as well. I don't know if other people growing and selling in different locations have noticed this, but I find especially in Seattle, a little bit less often. Like I actually have a few people on double shares, but the vast majority of my customers up in Seattle like have tiny fridges and they don't want too much. So
And also like knowing your audience, right? So when we had a CSA a long time ago, we had some customers that were great and had huge families and like did a lot of preservation, but 90% of your customers don't make pickles. They don't do candied pickled beets. They, you know, like they don't want beets every week or like 2 beets in a box every week, even though you might have that on the farm. So I think veering on the side of small is probably better. And they also don't have their compost piles like we do, or pigs. Like I have no problem rotting vegetables. I don't care, but they do definitely have an emotional reaction to wasting, especially because they have a connection to you and your farm and they feel bad if they aren't eating it.
Yeah, two kind of side things on that. So the first year, the mistake I made was leaving all the fronds on my fennel bulbs. I was like, I'm gonna just chop them off and throw them on the floor. Maybe you want them. And that was really overwhelming. And so now I trim off like 2/3 of the fronds and leave them just a few. And that seems to make people happier. So there is like, yeah, there's that presentation piece, especially if people are in urban areas or like not feeding a whole family, where making it look smaller can be helpful as well. And the other one is like, because again, my market is so heavily skewed towards 2 people households, 2 people and a tiny person, like whatever. I grow a lot of miniature vegetables. So I grow like mini cabbages, mini lettuces, and that's not necessarily what, you know, if you have families, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. But for people who just want to be like, I grow mini melons, like people can just cut it and have a meal. And that
You also
depending
have to
on
put it
who
in a
you're
box.
feeding. What?
I said it also has to fit in a box, right?
Yeah, the mini
like
things fit so
monster
much better in
watermelon.
boxes.
Okay.
Does
So like,
that help?
yes. So if there was to be like a one size share, would think like 5 to 7 items, or
Yeah, I think that would, like, if you did add-ons, that would be,
what with add-ons? Yeah.
yeah. And then people could add more if they want to.
Why doesn't everybody who has a CSA drop in the comment in the chat what their average box size is? That would be helpful. I know that a lot of people do offer 2 sizes, and so, you know, how you name those sizes too, instead of like half share and full share, you could call it like 2-person, 4-person, or, you know, family share, things like that, to give people an idea of how much food how many people you're trying to feed with it.
We found we had more confusion on family share. We had a family share and couple share for years, and people had no idea what that meant. So
Does that add more like complexity to the administration side, or
to the what? Sorry, my dog's
Does
drinking
it-
water.
does that add more complexity to like the administration side of things,
What you name it?
or having like multiple size shares?
Yes.
Totally.
Because then you have to figure that out and make sure you have that. I would say if you're just starting out, stick with one size share. We just went with 3 share sizes. We added a half share size like 2 years ago. And it was rough in the beginning, and now it's fine, but less is more if you're just starting out, I would say.
And people are dropping some tips in the chat. It looks like a good idea is if you do one size, you can maybe skew a little bit bigger and then offer every week or every other week. And that way people can kind of get less veggies just by having it less often, but you're not packing different sizes. So that's a really good point. I think a lot of people are doing that.
The other thing, I think Noah mentioned this in the chat, but I just wanted to like call this out when you're starting small as super useful. Probably the admin would make your head explode as you get bigger, but I do an a la carte share list as well. And this year I just did it. The last 2 years I've just done it by text messages. I looked into like fancy, more automated ways, and it just didn't really make sense at how I was doing it. But I basically, people opt in to get a text message 1 day a week. It's usually after I've finished all my CSA stuff and I know how much extra I have, and or if like people are on vacations or whatever. And I just send out a text to all of them 1 day a week, and they respond to me if they want to buy an a la carte box. So that's like, if you know, if you go through Bondador, you wouldn't need to do it that way necessarily, but if you're just doing it manually, like I easily moved 2 to 6 a la carte boxes a week that way. It was not an insignificant income stream for a small CSA, and like really quite easy for me to manage, and built a lot of nice personal relations. And some of those folks just stay a la carte, like they have crazy lives, whatever, but a lot of them ended up signing up for the CSA the following year. So it's kind of like a nice way to sample. I also offer that to everyone on my wait list. And most of them like sign up and say, yeah, I'd love to hear when you have extras, and then never follow up. But I have like a dedicated set of people who convert from being on the wait list to buying a la carte boxes to becoming CSA members the next year. And when I just had people on a wait list and there was like no communication for the following year, they were just gone afterwards.
Yeah, we tried that same like farmer's choice a la carte box. And we just send it out to our we've got a Mailchimp list section that's just our current CSA members, and then a Mailchimp list that's everybody on our newsletter. And we got great responses just by sending out only like a week in advance. Hey, we're gonna have a la carte boxes, pick up at this time and this date, and got a lot of interest. And like Jillian said too, people who ended up joining our CSA the next round.
We just have 1 minute left. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. There's a question in the chat about CSA Flowers. Maybe Emily, I know that you do a flower add-on. Most of what I've seen flower shares are based on just like a bouquet. They're not really specifying maybe the size of the bouquet, but maybe I'm wrong. Do you have any idea?
Oh, hi Claire. Yeah, so I guess the farmer that I work with, she it's like her like farmer's market size bouquet, which is I guess smaller than like the Pike Place style farmer's market bouquet. But I would say, so I sell them for $15. And no one's ever complained about it being too small. I don't know. I guess, yeah. I think it's like your standard size, like a big mason jar size bouquet. I don't know. Yeah, it is a medium. I don't know. People are just excited to get flowers. So
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to mess up. I would say that like when you're trying to decide if the bouquet is too big or too small, you have to also just think about your labor and the growing, right? If you're charging, was it 14 something, 14.40 a share and it's 12 to 15 stems, I mean, it depends on what flowers, right? Because some flowers are more valuable than others, some take more time. So you have to kind of do some of the work on figuring out what your actual costs are. But I don't think, it doesn't sound like you should stress too much about having a bouquet that's too big or too small, as long as it feels right to you for the value. I am so appreciative of all of you for being here. This has been a really great chat. If you haven't yet and you want to give me your email, go ahead and shoot it in the chat. I'm going to try and track down most of these on the back end of Zoom anyway, but I will send out these links to the slides and also the recording. It'll be up on our YouTube channel and I'll send you the link to that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming and spending your evening with us. And thank you so much, Jillian and Liz, for sharing all your knowledge. Really appreciate everybody. So thanks you all. Have a great night.